then that we give such secondary importance to the right to development, which in the minds of the vast majority of the world is of primary importance, more important even than the right to political free speech, etc., etc. And so perhaps we can start with that, though I would like, Mr. Mbaidjol, to ask you also to comment on the problem of selectivity in human rights, under which we seem to notice human rights violations in some countries, and we don't notice them in other countries. And we keep pointing fingers at others, forgetting this marvelous African proverb, which says, don't point fingers at others, because if you do so, you'll find that 3 fingers are pointing back at you. And so how does this happen? Who are you, and why do you give so much importance to human rights? And why do you draw a salary? What is the justification for it? You have the floor, sir.
Thank you for inviting me to this meeting. These are challenging questions, but I think, first of all, why is that we put rights and social and cultural rights? I think it comes from what was agreed upon in 1948. And again, 1948 is not the date where we discover human rights. It's rather the moment where we put all this in writing. I am a lawyer, so we need papers, we need reference. So it's wrong to say that we discovered human rights in 1948. It was put into a paper to make sure that governments and those who are leading us would agree on the essential of what to be done to allow the humanity to move ahead. That's the first point. My second point is, why is that we don't talk that much of economic and social rights? It's because those who have put this in place would like to see their voices heard by the government, by their rulers, by their leaders, to make sure that they would be in a position to cast a vote in a situation where they believe some changes may take place. And then the second point is that by casting a vote, you can orient, you can change the destiny of your country. That's why there's so much importance attached to political rights. But it doesn't mean that people would be left starved or their problems would not taken care of. Actually, why people have asked to participate is just to make sure that they can protect their interests. Behind the political rights, there is also an issue of interest, an issue of social organization, an issue of benefit, living in peace, living in dignity. So the word dignity encompasses not only the political rights, but also social and economic rights. Of course, we came forward with the role of the United Nations in the area of social and economic rights to lead to the adoption of the convention, but also the fact that these groupings in the United Nations are now pushing, or have pushed at that time, to make sure that their voices are heard. You may have heard about the Group of 77, you may have heard of the non-aligned movements. All these are groupings from the developing world. They were called the third world, but now the developing world, who would like to get their voices understood and heard by the world leaders. They are not sometimes part of the big decision-making processes, so they put themselves together to have this their voice heard. And I believe now the movement to get the economic and social rights being seen as one of the priorities has been translated into right to development. And right to development, when I say we, human rights advocates, hope you are too, because I would like to recruit some of you, if I may say, in supporting us in the work of human rights. And by doing that, right to development would be part of human rights. It is already, but it should be translated also into concrete action from the governments. I don't think that there is really a graduation or a sort of selectivity in the rights. Human rights is everything together in the life of an individual. Dignity. Dignity has all aspects in terms of education, right to food, right to decent work, right to shelter, and all these components of rights are part of what we believe is the human dignity. Selectivity, I think, again, this is a sort of, accusation, I should say, in the part of those who believe the system is selective. I think governments and leaders are selective because they are sometimes moved by their relations, their contacts, their bilateral priorities and relations, and states have only interests. It's our duty as human rights advocates to make sure that these duty bearers who are the governments accomplish a task and look at ways and means to improve human rights in their territories. What is lacking is the fact that states have only interest, and they may ignore the situation in some parts of or some specific countries, but then put forward where they believe they can sort of impede the positions of their, let's say, rivals or enemies or whatever kind of word you may use. But we, as a human rights movement, we should make sure that there is no selectivity. I think we would discuss more on this, and I am ready to elaborate on that.
Yes, but we have to go a bit deeper into some of the points that you've made. First is that you said that we have a document, and the fact that we put it together in 1948 is important. But none of us were there. You were not there. I was not there. We were all in the wombs of our colonial masters. And so this was negotiated by 51 countries. Today we are 192 countries. How can I accept a document in which I did not participate in the drafting of? That's point number one. Point number two, you know and I know that we had a global conference on human rights in 1993, and that in this global conference we had a major debate on the question of the right to development. And the lead country defending the right of development was me personally, and the lead country opposing the right of development was Maurice Abrams, the ambassador of the United States. And there was total disagreement about it, and ultimately I had to call for a vote in the conference in Vienna, and the result of the vote was that I got 138 votes and he got 4 votes. And that was how the right of development was finally imposed. So the United States has continually opposed the right to development, and till today believes that it's a secondary right. Now, if you believe in democracy, 3/4 of the world lives in developing countries, and you must then accept the verdict of the majority. 3/4 of the world believes that the right of development is critically important, and more so. Now, the third point is that we live in a globalized world. We are no longer, we can't hide behind borders and countries. All of us are Africans in origin, all of us, without exception. And if we are one family, then we can't just hide and say, no, it is your government that must do it. After all, who is responsible for the extraordinary problems of subsidies which destroy trade, which have killed a country like Mali or Zimbabwe for that matter? Who is responsible for the fact that the wealth of countries, including the Congo, the richest country in the world, has been exploited from outside? And Congo is like a Coca-Cola bottle with 50 straws in it. Everybody sucking the Coke out of that country. I find that it's an indefensible situation. And that is why the net result is poverty, which for me is the greatest violation of human rights. And therefore I want to know who is responsible for the poverty. After all, 250 years ago, we had a very equal distribution of